Hi there, I'll try to keep this video short. I made a previous version that get way too long. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this whole peaceful movement idea. I think it has some flaws. Uh, People always refer to Gandhi, that he changed things in India because he picked up the sand from the beach and it was like a symbolic gesture. And he led a popular movement that was peaceful. That's true, but there's about 10 years between the moment that he picked up the sand from the beach and the moment that the laws that he was actually objecting to were changed. And it was only changed when the first Indian government was installed and the last British governor or whatever it was left. On that day, laws were changed and the taxes were abolished. And what the situation was, of course, that India had to pay for salt and was deprived of salt, of its own salt, by Britain, the colonizing power. And actually, the most ridiculous thing is, of course, Britain imported salt from Britain, sold it to India, in return for the goods from India. Which is the same trick they did with China, where they said, well, okay, we cannot pay for all the stuff that you send us with silver, so what we will do is we will sell you opium. You know, if you think about that, so China was having a booming activity of all kinds of people, making porcelain for Britain. And what they asked for was silver, which is the means of exchange, which would actually create make more economical activity easier for China, because they would have more money to pay stuff with and exchange stuff in their economy. They could grow their economy. Instead of course, Britain didn't have that. So, but what Britain gave them was opium, which of course destroyed part of their population. And it didn't didn't happen by chance. They fought over it several times. But to come back to Gandhi, he had a peaceful movement, and it achieved a result in the end. But I think if you try to understand why it worked, then I think, and I've thought about it a little bit, then you would say it's the synchronicity of everything. Everything starts to move at the same time. That's what creates the change. And was people that were basically not, you could not motivate them to be aggressive. I guess all the aggressive people were clubbed down, and Indian people are pretty aggressive. I've been in India. They're not fighting, but they're very assertive. And so you had an image of a very peaceful person. Everybody could identify with him, and everybody understood. Okay, this is not about storming a castle or something like that. This is simply about being, doing things differently, making our own behavior, which is different from what is expected of us. And I think that it was a synchronicity of that movement that made an impression. Because the British could calculate very easily, okay, we have a continent, it's like huge, and we're only driving horses at this time. We don't have cars yet. So how are we going to control these people? We're not going to control these people. Too many of them. Let's give up. Let's get the fuck out of here. That's what they did. They simply decided that this was no longer useful to... I think that might be the reason. There might be other reasons, but... Of course there were some real militant groups and stuff like that. And maybe, the Ghandi movement actually allowed militant groups to pop up and make sure that there's actually somebody controlling and keeping order in regions. I'm not an expert on India. But if you take the Occupy New York and Occupy the World movements, what is very important about it, I think, is that it's all happening at the same time. But what is also very important to realize is that there's two ways to change things now. One is by making sure that the police comes to your side, and you get a bottom-up change where it becomes impossible to suppress these movements. So the authorities is offered a choice. Okay, either we're going to listen to these movements and we're going to change things according to the demands, or we're going to be run over by everybody. We're on our own. There must be a moment when you see, like, everybody is sympathetic to the Occupy Wall Street movement. or everybody that is, and you can identify with each of these persons. I made this webpage of women in Wall Street, and they're just normal women. Everybody can identify with them. So you become, if you are not of the same, let's say, mindset, you suddenly become, you kind of realize that you're on your own, and that feeling, I think, will bring change. And the other thing is, if that doesn't happen, if you have like robots, RoboCop disciplinary people, like the NYPD, by the way, because they're hugely bought by the banks. They have way too much money. They have all kinds of ambitious plans to start to police Holland and all that stuff. That will never happen. But if you got robots, or like the ones in Canada, they start beating on people. Then you get a riot, and it becomes violent. And it's really, if the atmosphere becomes that of an expectation that you have to be violent in order to get your way, but you're already trying to get your way, so why not just finish it? And then simply people will simply go to Washington and evacuate the Congress. I believe that would be my expectation. There's two choices, but the last one is horrible because people will be hurt, and the solution will not easily be achieved because the new leaders that will be installed will not be carried by the majority. While if you have, let's say, a bottom-up movement that drives change, that drives McCain to step down from his seat and offer his seat in Congress to somebody else, to somebody with a brain and not with a kind of a death wish, that can then change the laws of the banking system so they become a proper resource management system instead of a parasitic free-for-all. It's like we used to have, we still have actually, we have factories, cookie factories and chocolate factories. And then, the rule in the chocolate factory was you can eat as much as you like. And then the girls would go, and there were always girls working there because they had the little hands to put the chocolate in the boxes. And they would all go like, yes, I can work in the chocolate factory. But after like 3 hours, they would go like, oh no, my God, no more. Well, that didn't happen with Wall Street, of course, but they had some kind of the same thing, we're all this money is all going here, and we are managing, we are controlling the price in the market. We can do everything. We are God. We can make countries die of starvation. We can make industries grind to a halt because we up the price of oil, or we have so much money that we can order oil ships to change course and all together at the same time, and the country will not have oil for the next 2 weeks. These type of things, similar events where you have oil supply shortages, and very recently it happened in France, it happened in the US, where gas stations were empty because somebody went on strike. Well, of course, the financial system can do exactly the same. There's so much that you can control if all people behave the same and they all obey money. And so the essence of Wall Street, I think, the whole occupation thing is that they realize that obeying money, which the goons will have to do if they want to beat down occupation, they have to listen to money more than to their own common sense. If you stop doing that and you start listening to, well, okay, how do we do this right? There's something going wrong. How do we do it right? Okay, first of all, we don't need leaders that try to insult foreign leaders and try to pull them into some kind of paranoia that might lead to war. We don't need leaders that say, well, war is fine. We don't need a Rick Perry that says that income disparities in the population, he doesn't care about it. I have people in my parliament that say financial matters, I don't give a shit about it. It's a leader that says that. Such a person cannot be a leader, or he can only be a leader if he cheated somehow. And that's what these people have been doing. So they have to be removed. Anyway, way too long story. I hope it's coherent. I'm kind of tired, but so Occupy Wall Street has to achieve this change, and hopefully it does. And I think that the approach would be to make sure that the local authorities are on your side. And I'm not sure if that's feasible, and it's very easy for me to say here. I didn't go to occupy Amsterdam. I didn't go to occupy the Malieveld. And there's now a new movement, Occupy Groningen, and there's Occupy Utrecht. I don't think, you should be there. You should be in The Hague. You should be in the Binnenhof, occupying the Binnenhof. And you can do that quite effectively. But at the same time, we're in Europe, and you can definitely read in the news that Europe as a whole, so from the European Commission, which is governing it, and as member states, are realizing certain things. I'm still a little bit suspicious about Sarkozy and his relationship with Merkel, but I do think it was highly criticized that he went into Libya with his fighter jets, but he has bought, let's say, before England and before everybody else. But it's a good thing he did it, I think, and he seems to have secured, or helped secure it, and Germany as well, of course, German intelligence, oil for Europe, which will basically reduce the pressure on Europe and reduce the instability and give it the ability to help Greece out as long enough to have it generate its own energy with renewables, all that stuff. Theoretically, still a bit suspicious, but that's a better situation than the US, which basically and England, where David Cameron is basically told to shut up, and he's not part of the Eurozone. Anyway, I hope this video makes sense. Thanks for listening.